Welcome to American Scandal Report by Skoob, where truth is stranger than fiction, and federal agents played roles that would make Hollywood jealous. I'm your host, Oz Dalton, and today we're diving deep into one of the most audacious FBI operations in American history, a sting that started with stolen art and ended up toppling senators and congressmen. Picture this: fake Arab sheiks, briefcases full of cash, yacht parties in Florida, and politicians so eager for dirty money they practically lined up at the FBI's door. This is ABSCAM, where the line between law enforcement and elaborate theater completely disappeared. Let's rewind to 1978. The disco era is in full swing, but in the shadows of New York City, federal agents are cooking up something far more complex than any John Travolta movie. What started as a routine investigation into La Cosa Nostra, gangsters dealing in stolen art, would morph into the most spectacular political takedown in decades. The operation's name? ABSCAM, short for the rather blunt Abdul Scam. Yes, you heard that right. The FBI, in all their creative wisdom, decided subtlety wasn't their strong suit when it came to code names. Agent John Good was just another federal employee trudging through paperwork, fighting that hated necktie, and facing the prospect of a 75-minute drive through rain-slicked Long Island traffic to get home to his sleeping family. Little did he know he was about to orchestrate one of the most controversial operations in FB1 history. The Bureau's initial focus was simple: catch crooks dealing in stolen art. They set up shop under the fake name Abdul Enterprises in a Long Island office, complete with all the theatrical props needed to convince criminals they were dealing with wealthy Middle Eastern businessmen. But here's where it gets interesting, and this is a pattern you'll see throughout our story. When you set up elaborate traps for criminals, you often catch bigger fish than you bargained for. Through wiretaps and surveillance, agents discovered something that made their stolen art investigation look like small potatoes. Government officials were involved with the mob. The focus shifted like a predator catching a new scent. New York gangsters suddenly became secondary targets. The real prize was swimming in the murky waters of American politics. Every great operation needs a star performer, and ABSCAM found theirs in the most unlikely place: a federal courthouse where a professional swindler was facing wire fraud charges. Meet Melvin Weinberg, a man whose entire career was built on the fine art of deception. Agent Fuller called Good from Pittsburgh with news that would change everything. Weinberg was ready to deal. But this wasn't your typical informant arrangement. Weinberg didn't want anything for himself. He wanted legal absolution for a woman he called Lady Diane. Classic con man move, really. Even when caught, he's negotiating for someone else, building loyalty and maintaining his reputation as a stand-up guy in the criminal underworld. Good wasn't born yesterday. Tell Weinberg we'll do what we can for her if he delivers, he told Fuller. But let him know that we don't produce unless he delivers first. This guy's a professional swindler, and the Bureau isn't going to wind up as one of his marks. The irony is delicious. The FBI was worried about being conned by a con man they were hiring to con other con men. Welcome to ABSCAM, where nothing is quite what it seems. Weinberg agreed to cooperate, and suddenly the Bureau had their inside man. But managing Mel Weinberg was like trying to harness lightning. Good assigned agents Fuller and Jack McCarthy to handle him day to day, and immediately the personality clashes began. Picture this dynamic. You have McCarthy, a grey-haired Calvinistic Irish Catholic who'd spent his lifetime fighting crooks, compromisers, and corruption. To him, Weinberg was still a crook, no matter what he professed, and had to be watched carefully. Then you have Fuller, less rigid but still very much a bookman. There was the FBI way and the wrong way. And in the other corner, you have Weinberg, highly volatile, disliking orders, preferring to work alone. His expensive and flamboyant style was complete anathema to his FBI supervisors. He was shifty, quick-witted, egotistical, thrived on admiration, despised rules, scorned conventional morality, and regarded crookdom as a proud and much maligned profession. The culture clash was immediate and constant. Here were these careful, conservative, cautious federal agents trying to work with a man whose stock in trade was the lie, the stall, the convincing half-truth. And Weinberg? He saw nothing incompatible about working for the FBI and making a quick buck on the side. Their first strategy session took place beside Weinberg's swimming pool at his Central Islip home in the summer of 1977. The image is almost too perfect. Federal agents in their serious suits, sitting poolside with a professional swindler, planning to take down organized crime. They decided to focus on two of Weinberg's former associates. Fred Pro, a New York front end scammer who had once owned his own offshore bank, and Joe Trocchio, a veteran hoodlum with ties to organized crime. Trocchio was the more dangerous target. He was awaiting trial on charges of peddling $150,000 in stolen Swiss travelers' checks, and four potential witnesses in his case had already been murdered. This was the world ABSCAM was entering, where witness intimidation meant murder, where offshore banks were fronts for criminal enterprises, and where the line between legitimate business and organized crime was deliberately blurred. As ABSCAM evolved, it became clear that the FBI was essentially producing an elaborate piece of theatre. The star of their show was the mysterious Kambir Abdul Rahman, a fictional Arab sheik so wealthy and influential that American politicians would line up to meet him. Weinberg played the sheik's representative, and he played it brilliantly. Remember, this was a man who had made a career out of convincing people to trust him with their money, only to disappear with it. Now he was using those same skills in service of the federal government. The operation's scope began expanding beyond anyone's wildest imagination. What started with stolen art in New York was moving toward New Jersey politicians, and then, incredibly, toward Washington, D.C. itself. The FBI's methodology was deceptively simple. Pose as Middle Eastern businessmen, offer members of Congress $50,000 in cash in exchange for legislative favors for their fictional Arab sheik. The meetings were set up like scenes from a spy movie, on a yacht in Florida, in hotel rooms in Pennsylvania and New Jersey, and in a house in Washington, D.C. But here's what made ABSCAM so controversial. The FBI wasn't just catching criminals in the act. They were creating elaborate scenarios designed to tempt officials into committing crimes. They were, in essence, manufacturing opportunities for corruption and then expressing shock when people took the bait. The first elected official to fall into their web was Angelo Ericetti, the mayor of Camden, New Jersey. FBI surveillance cameras, and yes, they filmed everything, captured Ericetti making a deal with agents supposedly representing the sheik. The prize? A license for a casino in Atlantic City that the phony sheik planned to build. Ericetti took $25,000 in cash as a down payment for his service to fast-track the permit. Just like that, a mayor had sold his office for the price of a decent car. The ease with which it happened must have been both thrilling and horrifying for the agents involved. The cameras kept rolling, the tape recorders kept turning, and more officials kept taking the bait. Now we come to one of the most audacious elements of the entire operation, a yacht party in Florida that reads like something out of a crime novel. Agent Good had fought an uphill battle to get bureau permission for this elaborate affair. There was no precedent for it. A United States senator was involved. The possibility for embarrassment to the already shaken FBI was enormous. But Good believed in Weinberg's ability to work miracles, and after long consideration, the top brass backed him. The preparation alone was like something out of Hollywood. Good flew in with Agent Jacobs and several other ABSCAM agents, setting up a command post at the Hawaiian Village Motel several miles from the marina. They rented impressive dress-white uniforms for agents assigned to act as captain and crew of the Emir's yacht. Another agent was assigned to be the Emir's official photographer. Everyone was ready for what would essentially be a floating crime scene. Ericetti arrived 2 days early on March 22nd, 1979, bringing his nephew and Tony Torcasio, who was Guccione's casino manager. Yes, that Guccione of Penthouse magazine fame. The guest list read like a who's who of corruption. Hustlers, politicians, casino managers, and federal agents pretending to be Middle Eastern royalty. Weinberg, Amoroso, and McCarthy moved from room to room in the hotel, greeting new arrivals like hosts at the world's most expensive and illegal house party. And through it all, the tape recorders were turning, capturing everything. Much of the time was spent with Ericetti, who was obviously impressed by the luxury of his surroundings. He bragged that both he and Senator Williams had cancelled important New Jersey political appearances to come to Florida. The mayor was so confident in his corruption that he was treating it like a legitimate business meeting. The conversations captured during this yacht party are extraordinary in their casual criminality. Ericetti agreed to have McDonald, another official in their network, come to Abdul's Long Island office to accept a $100,000 casino commission bribe directly. But here's the beautiful detail that shows how insulation works in corruption. McDonald would wait in the parking lot in the car while Ericetti went upstairs and accepted the bribe for him. That place should move like lightning, Ericetti told the fake Arabs about their casino license. If it's fucked up, I want to know. You're buying the whole fucking town. You got 4 fucking guaranteed commissioners. But the yacht party's real treasure trove came from conversations with Torcasio, the former casino manager of the Tropicana in Las Vegas. As Weinberg and Amoroso listened in fascination, Torcasio described various ways he could skim huge sums of money off casinos without the owners being aware of it. I never lie to my friends, Torcasio promised. When we break bread, you guys will never have to work. If you come up to me and say we got to have $80,000 taken off, it'll be there. You know what that is? 80,000 without any taxes? The yacht party culminated in a ceremonial presentation where the fictional Yasser would give Ericetti a knife. Weinberg explained the significance. That knife I told you, that is a knife of friendship he's given you. That's a ceremonial knife. That means more than the watch. Ericetti understood the theater completely. Well, I'm going to pick it up as such. The fact that I understand this is a symbol of friendship. Here were American officials participating in Middle Eastern ceremonial traditions to cement their corrupt relationships with people who didn't even exist. The absurdity was matched only by the criminality. As ABSCAM's net spread wider, it began ensnaring bigger fish. The investigation that started with stolen art was now reaching into the halls of Congress itself, and the ease with which elected officials took bribes was both shocking and sadly predictable. Congressman Richard Kelly's takedown is particularly memorable for its brazen desperation. When Agent Amoroso offered him money in exchange for legislative favors, Kelly's response was immediate. "Very good arrangement," he said. "I'm glad to be associated with you. Let's do it." But here's the detail that makes it unforgettable. "Don't stumble around, jump in there and get it," Kelly told Amoroso, referring to the money. As Amoroso reached into the drawer and handed Kelly $25,000, the congressman added, "I'm so damn poor you wouldn't believe it. I mean, if I told you how poor I was, you'd cry. I mean, tears would roll down your eyes." The former judge, whom someone had derisively called 10 speed in brown shoes, then carefully stuffed the bills into all of his pockets. But here's the beautiful criminal detail. Kelly was stiffing his partners. His intention was to sneak the money right by them, and he did precisely that. This wasn't just corruption, it was corruption with a side of betrayal. But the biggest prize of all was Senator Harrison A. Williams of New Jersey. Before his fall from grace, Williams was described as New Jersey's senator for life because of his high approval ratings over a 20-year incumbency. He was a popular champion of organized labor, a man who seemed politically untouchable. Williams had the unenviable distinction of becoming the first U.S. senator in 80 years to be jailed. His political career ended after he was charged and convicted of 9 counts in their ABSCAM prosecutions. Alongside Williams, 5 members of the House of Representatives fell: John Jenrette, Richard Kelly, Raymond Lederer, Michael Ozzie Myers, and Frank Thompson. Each was convicted in separate trials of bribery and conspiracy. The pattern was remarkably consistent. Agents would approach through intermediaries, offer money for legislative favors, and elected officials would accept with shocking casualness. The investigation revealed not just individual corruption, but a system where such corruption seemed almost routine. Not every politician who encountered ABSCAM ended up in handcuffs, and these cases are just as revealing as the convictions. Take Congressman John Murtha of Pennsylvania, a Vietnam veteran who met with undercover agents but was never charged. When the scandal became public, Murtha repeatedly maintained his innocence, saying he met with undercover agents only to discuss possible Arab investment in his district. Justice Department officials announced in 1980 that Murtha would not face prosecution. The Murtha case highlights one of ABSCAM's most controversial aspects. Where exactly is the line between legitimate political networking and corruption? Murtha's defenders argued he was simply doing his job, meeting with potential investors for his district. Critics wondered if he simply handled the situation more carefully than his colleagues who got caught. Then there's the case that never quite happened. Congressman Peter Rodino of New Jersey, chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. Rodino's name was mentioned by multiple targets. Congressman Myers, Lederer, and Jenrette all brought him up. Builder Joe Silvestri claimed he could arrange a meeting. Washington was in a box. Rodino's name was all over the tapes that would be used in other trials. The government was sure to be asked what steps had been taken to check out these leads. So Weinberg and Amoroso pursued it, working through Silvestri to reach Tony DeLuca, a New Jersey labor man who claimed he could get through to Rodino. But DeLuca explained that no one met Rodino directly on matters like this. The way to the congressman was through his son-in-law, Charles Stancial, a Newark attorney. The meeting was set for mid-January at the cocktail lounge of the Meadowlands Hilton. Present were Stanciala, DeLuca, Weinberg, and Amoroso. Weinberg wore a body tape, though the background noise made recording difficult. Amoroso gave the standard story. Arabs needed a bill introduced to stay in the US when they came here, willing to pay $50,000 to Rodino for introducing it. But Stanciala was more careful than the politicians who had been caught. He offered a step-by-step process. The Arabs would hire his law firm as consultants for the first fee. The firm would check out the Arab's background. If everything was satisfactory, they'd handle the case for another fee. Eventually, they might actually meet Rodino. It was expensive, time-consuming, and offered no guarantee of actually reaching the congressman. After 2 years of ABSCAM, security was becoming increasingly difficult, and the team was physically exhausted. The decision was made: shelve Rodino. No more cases. The irony is delicious. Rodino would later be one of ABSCAM's harshest critics, calling it fraught with so much peril of jeopardizing reputations. One wonders if his criticism would have been as sharp if his son-in-law had been less cautious. When ABSCAM became public, the reaction was explosive and divided. The operation had netted a US senator and 7 congressmen during the last 6 months of its 2-year existence, seemingly validating the premise that if you set out to catch crooks, you'll often catch congressmen. But the praise came with heavy criticism. House Speaker Tip O'Neill called it a setup, a goddamn setup. Senator Bill Bradley of New Jersey said, "I deplore the fact that the rights of those being investigated have not been protected, and I deplore the rush to condemn, to joke, and be cynical." The American Civil Liberties Union questioned how much evidence of wrongdoing had been available before targets were selected. Congressman John F. Seiberling of Ohio worried about giving some people of dubious moral standards free rein to entice anyone they can entice to commit a crime. The criticism highlighted ABSCAM's fundamental controversy. Was this legitimate law enforcement or entrapment on a massive scale? The FBI was essentially creating crimes and then prosecuting people for committing them. U.S. Senator Larry Pressler of South Dakota revealed he too had been approached at the Washington townhouse. He claimed that when Weinberg and Amoroso vaguely mentioned contributions, he stood up and said the meeting's purpose was different than he was led to believe. "I repeated 3 times the word illegal," he said, implying he had stalked out. Pressler's account, whether entirely accurate or not, showed how politicians could have handled the approaches differently. The question remained, were those who got caught simply more corrupt or simply less careful? The Washington Post complained in an editorial, "No citizen, member of Congress or not, should be required to prove his integrity by resisting temptation." But supporters argued that elected officials should be held to higher standards, not lower ones. Meanwhile, the Department of Justice concentrated on finding and punishing those responsible for leaking ABSCAM information to the press. Richard Blumenthal was appointed to conduct the probe. FBI agents descended on the ABSCAM team, requiring lie detector tests and hours of questioning. Media columnist Tom Collins captured the surreal moment. The question in many journalists' minds is a simple one. Who is going to wind up in jail, reporters or congressmen? The human drama of ABSCAM extended far beyond the courtroom convictions. Angelo Ericetti, the Camden mayor who was the first to fall, was convicted in 1981 and served nearly 3 years in prison. After his conviction, he resigned his mayoral post. But here's the remarkable part. After Ericetti was released from prison, he ran for office again. Despite the ABSCAM scandal, he won a seat in the New Jersey state legislature. The voters of New Jersey apparently decided his corruption was either forgivable or forgettable. This raises fascinating questions about political accountability and public memory. How does a politician caught on camera taking bribes win election to higher office? What does this say about voter attitudes toward corruption? The operation's toll on the FBI team was enormous. Agent Good, Amoroso, and Weinberg literally staggered with physical exhaustion after 2 years of elaborate deception. Managing an operation of this complexity with this many moving parts and this much at stake, took a human toll that's rarely discussed. Weinberg himself remained enigmatic to the end. When interviewed twice during the leak investigation, he agreed to take a polygraph test at the first interview, but flatly refused at the second. Even as a government cooperator, he remained unpredictable and uncontrollable. The broader impact of ABSCAM on American politics is still debated. Did it clean up corruption or simply make politicians more careful about how they conducted corrupt business? Did it restore faith in law enforcement's ability to hold politicians accountable? Or did it damage faith in democratic institutions by revealing how easily they could be corrupted? As we close the chapter on ABSCAM, the questions linger long after the tapes stop rolling. Was this a masterstroke of justice or a dangerous case of entrapment? ABSCAM didn't just expose corrupt politicians. It revealed how comfortably power, money, and favors circulated in late 1970s American politics. At the heart of it all was Melvin Weinberg, a lifelong con artist turned government informant, using deception to uncover deception. The irony is unsettling. With 31 convictions, including a US senator and multiple members of Congress, ABSCAM delivered results. But its real legacy lies in what it forced us to confront: how thin the line truly is between legal influence and outright bribery. And here's the chilling part. If the FBI cameras hadn't been rolling, would any of this have mattered at all? If this story left you questioning where politics ends and corruption begins, there's much more beneath the surface. Download the Skoob app now to get access to the full story, exclusive deep dives, and episodes that go beyond the headlines. This has been the ABSCAM Chronicles. Because in American politics, the most revealing performances are often the ones no one thinks are staged.